It's Monday. Welcome to Missions Monday. We're here in the studio with Pastor Jason from Baltimore. We've got via Zoom, we've got Shea Watson from Silver Spring, and we've got the genius behind our social media program here in Baltimore, Ryan Reagan. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey, hi.
So, we're talking about missions in the digital age. Roughly right now, there are close to 2 billion internet users around the globe. And of that 2 billion, you figure that's 25% of the global population. And in the next 5 years, they're suggesting that that number could get as high as 5 billion increasing. So basically, almost 5 out of every 6 human beings will be connected on some way on the internet. And that has got to, I guess, affect how we reach people with the gospel. So we'll talk about that today. But first, let's begin with the devotional by Pastor Jason.
Thanks, Pastor Renaldo. Good morning, everyone. I'm really passionate about this thought just because, as Pastor Renaldo mentioned, I was kind of looking at some stats, and the stats are staggering, actually. We got 7 billion people in the world, and 4 billion are on the internet. 3 billion are on social media. So in 60 seconds, check this out, 1 million people log into Facebook, 3.8 million searches were made on Google, 4.5 million videos were viewed on YouTube, and over 348,000 people scroll in a minute on Instagram. So with you, the digital age, this digital frontier is really important. And obviously with the good, there's the bad. So there's boundaries and ways to do it. But I just want to kind of bring just some ideas today that will help us understand the value of not only social media, but having a website, having podcasts, having downloadables, ebooks, videos, YouTubes. These are all ways to think about that we have the world at our fingertips. And working with InReach here at Greater Grace, we've kind of been watching the scope of it with new visitors. Like 8 out of 10 people under the age of 40 are looking at our contents before they walk through our door. So that's a huge number. So 8 out of 10. So and we often see that as they talk to us, and they are just blessed by our content. And I think if we have the right content, that's we're going to draw the right people, or the people that are interested in that content. Also, very interestingly enough, here's 2 more stats. The average person, think about this, touches their phone 2,600 times a day. And if you're someone in the top 20% that maybe works from home or works with their phone, or is a teenager or a millennial for that matter, 5,400 times they touch their phone. So we have a huge opportunity to again, share the gospel because we have the world at our fingertips. I was just reading 2 resources from Digital Babylon and Digital Evangelism, 2 great resources. But in our accelerated, complex culture, our screen age, our digital age, people are looking for answers. They're looking for purpose. I was reading a testimony or watching a testimony from Tim Tebow in 2009 when he was playing in the championships. He had he had this John 3:16 under his eyes, and check this out. This is in 2009. 94 million people Googled what John 3:16 was. So that's insane. That's an insane number. So when we're thinking about evangelism and presenting the gospel, obviously people are more connected than ever, but they're so disconnected. They're so lonely. They're so, so isolated, we could say. So a personal message, a personal approach, a personal God, these are huge things. And Paul says it here in 1 Corinthians 9, verses that we know, but again, sharing the importance of a personal gospel. And he's in verse 17, he's sharing what's committed unto him. He sees the reward of it and the power of it in verse 18. And he's free of all men, yet he makes himself a servant. So when you think about social media and people demonize technology every day, and it's interesting. You look at how we've put people on the moon and have had great technological advancements, but morally we have digressed astoundingly. And so, just to say this is that helping people connect to a personal God, personal content, a provoking word that draws them to their Bible, that draws them to an interaction. Because a lot of people will look at it passively, kind of watch you from afar, kind of make their own conclusions. But then, by the grace of God and through prayer and through some creativity, maybe they may email you or text you, or better yet, come to what your event is and have that FaceTime, which is what we all want. But think about this. Again, he said, I became all things to all men, that by all means we'd win some. And with the world at our fingertips, it's amazing just to think, who are we reaching today? Of course, there's boundaries. We want to have a pure and good, biblically sound yet relevancy. I think I've been seeing that a lot with young people just posting on Facebook. It's amazing how honest people feel that they can be on these social media platforms for everyone to see. So it's like, again, having a message that's not our own, that's relevant, not necessarily culturally approved, but it's biblical, but it's creative, and it's also something that draws people back to Christ. So social media, I really believe, can be a great tool. I think it'd be a great tool to minister life and minister hope. So I'll just say this too. I don't, just as well as we could say about small groups, but technology is not meant to substitute or take the place of church, take the place of body life, but it's meant to complement. With the COVID, some have enjoyed the online presence. I know in our church we've grown up 50% in our viewers. That's incredible. 50% growth this year in 2020. Well, we're in 2021, but in 2020. So, and to think that more people are connecting to something that brings hope. All things to reach all men. And that's why I really believe, and I know Ryan does an excellent job just presenting our pastor's message. I mean, we have a very robust AV team here that Paul Nye and the crew, they really do a great job in getting the message out. Because there's so much fluff, there's so much vagueness, so much politically correctness. But when you speak the gospel or present the gospel or have sound teaching, apologetically relevant, we really see there's salvations, there's connections that we maybe won't know till heaven. So that's incredible. So Titus 2:1, but you are to proclaim things consistent with sound teaching. So again, we can see a lot of opinions. We can see a lot of political ranting. And again, I think we have the boundaries of what would glorify Christ, what would draw the body together, what would be that thing that would promote hope. I love the YouVersion app. It's a great app. It helps you read your Bible. I mean, these are great tools. I mean, millions of people have downloaded that app. So again, these are tools to reach all men, reaching the skeptic, reaching the atheist, reaching the millennial. Because in Generation X and Generation Z, I mean, they're on their phones. I mean, the internet was made public in 1993. So I don't know how old you were in 1993. I won't tell you how old I was, but I grew up without the internet. Let's put it that way. So I really believe this is a tool that God can reach the unreached. And just think about that today. It's amazing. Matthew 28:19 and 20, again, using all means to baptize, teach, and to disciple. And I love this word, observe all things. Observe all things. So I don't think the internet should be demonized. In that sense, I think technology is a great tool. It's all in how you use it, right? It's all in how you use it. And I think with forethought and creativity and lots of prayer, you're not going to reach everybody. You're going to have a lot of opinions maybe, but having a church website, maybe I'll just highlight on that for a minute. Having a church website that describes your mission, that offering free things, downloadables. Just for instance, we have a book by our founding pastor called Just Let God Love You. We have PDFs or QR codes. We have all kinds of downloadables, podcasts, the RSS feeds. I personally have a podcast. I know we have Shea and Michelle, the Pantry podcast. They're amazing. They got great content. It's like, again, in this digital age, we're flooding it with the message of Christ. Otherwise, the devil floods with his message. And I'll just close with this in Isaiah 12:4. And maybe I could just say this too before I get going. Not to make it an age thing, but there is a generational gap. I mean, typically, what I have seen is anyone under 40 typically is more responsive and willing to work with technology. So in our churches, when there's people over that age, we must not forget them, right? We don't want to exclude them. Maybe, we still have paper that we work with for the most part. And I think like paper is still valuable. I was talking with a young person recently. We were kind of joking about writing and pencils and pens. Like, it's like, do you write anything anymore? And, everyone's voice texting or voice, Google Christianity, just totally searching and Alexa this and Google that and the Google-fi and all these things. It's fascinating. I think technology is fascinating, but we can be absorbed and even overwhelmed. But if we're using it with the mindset, how can I present the gospel? How can I show a living Christ? Christ doesn't need to be made relevant, by the way. His truth and through the Holy Spirit is made relevant. And this is what it says in Isaiah 12:4. In that day, they say, praise the Lord, call upon his name, declare his doings among the people, make mention that his name is exalted. So, again, I think there's an opportunity to share testimonies and just show missions all over the world. Like I get these videos from men of God in Africa, and I don't even know them. I don't even know how we connected, actually. And he shows me shows these great works of God over the world. So it's like technology makes the far near, and if there's a personal mission in it, there can be really a great harvest in it. So I just encourage us, have the boundaries, be creative, give away free things, of course. Let it be a fish hook. I think we should cast our net out very wide, and obviously, people will come if they want to come, and then the people that are not connected, let's not forget them too. Let's be creative in keeping them connected too. So, amen. That's my thoughts.
Awesome. Just a lot to digest there, a lot to unpack. I find that the pandemic kind of grabbed the world and said, TV no more. It just kind of grabbed the world and said, okay. And a lot of ministries were not on television because they couldn't afford studio. They couldn't afford the television. But suddenly the internet made it very affordable, and the pandemic made it very necessary. So I want to put this to you, Ryan. How do you feel that the pandemic kind of pushed us as a ministry forward in the area of social media?
Well, I think that during that time when we had a period of time where we were only online, it really helped us to be creative in terms of how we were promoting things, what we were doing online. For us, we really pushed like live things. So we had like Pastor Paul Angelonis would do a fireside chat on Friday nights, and he would grab other pastors from local churches or even around the world. Like I really liked the quote that Pastor Jason said about technology makes the far near. It really kind of did. So we had to learn ways to gather without gathering personally and together in a space. So we gathered virtually. And I think for us, it really gave people something to look forward to, specifically with the Friday night chats. Like people knew that something was coming on a Friday night. They got excited about who to listen to. We made it interactive so they could talk with each other. The same for Julius and the music ministry. They did pop-up concerts. They would record some from home, some from the studio here. So I think it really caused us to think a little bit more creatively, and it kind of fast-tracked our digital world. And I think there's certain things we just won't let go of now that we're semi back to normal in some sense. Like, we had our morning devotional, so that would go on Facebook Live. We worked on ways to get our church services to go on Instagram Live so we could get different demographics, because we know some demographics are just going to be on Instagram, some are just going to be on Facebook, some are on both. So yeah, I think it forced us to be a little bit more creative and think outside of what we always did on a regular basis.
Interestingly, that a lot of the mainline churches had zero on social media before the pandemic. I mean, they had almost nothing, and some of them still don't even have Zoom today. What would be a counsel or an advice that you would give someone that's thinking about as a mainline church or as a traditional church, how to get online as far as social media is concerned?
I think, like, if you just start, like, get a profile for Facebook, Instagram, start with some quotes from your church services, or you can even just advertise that you have, how is your church being broadcast? Where is church? Are you having church? If you don't have the ability to record church, you could at least do a devotional, a quick, few paragraphs or a couple sentences, some quotes. But I would start by getting your church or your ministry on one of the social platforms and then start from there.
Yeah, I know that there's the difference between social media and having an online presence. I know traditionally the online presence is more like a website. I mean, that was considered very advanced to have a website. It was like a big rush in the 90s to have a website. But now a lot of guys don't have so much a website. It's basically, a lot of it is just social media. And then in some cases, the social media operates as their unofficial website. Have you found that to be, I think, is that easier to get into than trying to develop a website? I mean, my history goes back to having to have a website manager, someone that had to manage it, that required maintenance. But now everything's kind of hands-free, right?
Yeah, and I think, even if you don't have a website or the ability to have a website or a team that can manage your website, your Instagram or your Facebook or anything is accessible from your phone, your tablet. So you could have church just from your, from your Facebook. You can go Facebook Live, and it could be any of your team. It could be, I could leave right now and go start my church in, wherever. Wow. And I have my phone, and I have an Instagram page. I could go live and start a sermon or a message. I could record a message and post it online. The social media can be your website in the time being. Wow. Or for, forever, if you don't want to have an actual traditional web page. But I think right now technology is so advanced and so easily accessible that it makes it a lot easier. Some just don't necessarily know how to go about it. But I think, you have a phone, it has internet, it has data. Just go out there and start preaching, saying something, promoting things. Yeah. Now
more than ever, churches can be empowered to reach a lot more people because of that, like Pastor Jason mentioned. But I also want to take it from a different perspective, and this is where I want to bring in Shea and Michelle. Beyond the church reach, using social media to reach people, I'm also want to speak to the person that has a personal ministry. I mean, the individual believer or the individual person. I'm not a church, but I have a ministry. 2 Corinthians 3, verse 6. Verse 5, I have a ministry. I'm an able minister. God has made me a minister. So I know that for many of us, there's all kind of little outreaches that started, but when the internet kind of really opened up, particularly because we can't gather, a lot of people don't gather. Now the internet has become the mission field. And Shea, you and Michelle have really carved a niche. What would you say to someone who feels they have a ministry and would like to use the internet to promote their ministry or reach people?
First, I love what we're hearing. I really do love this idea of coming together, the creativeness in it. You know, we're all one body with many different members, right?
Right.
When we're talking about those churches that are wanting to move out, the traditional churches, the churches that are kind of like, well, you know, body life. No, body life is like the life. We didn't start the Pantry podcast. It came to an idea. We did bring Pastor in on it and say, hey, we're going to start this, you know, and kind of got that go ahead. You know, this was something God was calling. But those churches that have those people, they have creatives within them. They've got Generation Z people. They've got generation, you know, the millennial or the whatever, who knows how to use this, who knows how to use this phone. This book, this is the greatest book that you guys put out, Greater Grace Glossary, right? This is an awesome book, but I can't hump this thing around with me everywhere. The Blue Letter Bible on my phone, I can look up Greek, I can look up Hebrew, I can look up, you know, what Matthew Henry might be saying about it, and it's all one app in my phone. So when I'm out there on the street and someone's questioning something, you're like, man, you know what? The Greek word for love, and you bring in agape, and then you expound on agape. Well, this is the same idea as your ministry. It's like you're called to this ministry, and all we're doing is adding another addition. You hear that? Because, you know, men's ministry leader down here in Silver Spring, we do the life group. I do the life group here in Silver Spring. Before COVID, we actually were offering for the people who couldn't make it here, we were offering them to come in via Zoom and be with us and be part of us, even though we were meeting in the house. That way they could be interactive. They could sit there and say, hey, what's up? So as a ministry, this becomes another role. Greater Grace Silver Spring, we're very spread out. We have people from Baltimore that help us. You know, some of your church members come down and help us. Dee Dee, our drummer. I mean, we're supplied by a lot of outward, like hours away.
Sure. And
so by offering that, we actually expanded on our life group. We actually expanded on being able to bring the word. Now, and demographic wise, our demographic in life group is 20 years old all the way up to 70 years old. Our demographic for the Pantry podcast, there's an 18-year difference. We're in her millennial demographic and in my 50-year-old demographic. And it's an amazing thing how when you bring this ministry out and online, you can move forward. So then I'm going to turn over to Michelle because she has more of the statistical side.
I do it for a living.
Yeah, she does it for a living.
I get paid side. The paycheck side.
Yeah, you know, it's cool because we had decided, God had prompted us in a lot of different ways by people that are unrelated to one another, don't even know each other, starting to talk to us about, you should have a radio show, you should have a podcast, you should go live on Facebook. You know, people would enjoy hearing you guys go back and forth about the Bible. And so we took that to mean that we should definitely pray about it. And so when we jumped in, we actually had this long marketing rollout plan that I had slated out, that we're going to roll out in May around our wedding anniversary. And then COVID happened, and we realized that whole marketing plan, there's nothing wrong with marketing. There's nothing wrong with having a plan, but that was obviously not God's plan, because we were supposed to be uplifting people. And this was the perfect time. We had no idea it would last this long, that people would be, you know, stuck in their house this long. But what we started and what we've learned is that there are a lot of people out there that are really overwhelmed by the technological aspects of online ministry, because they've heard best practices from people who think that every time there's a new social app out there, they need to jump on it, they need to learn it, they need to master it, and they need to not drop anything else. And I think that just like in real world ministry, where the Lord has called you to share the gospel and you've been given specific skills and talents to administer that out to people, a lot of the time you'll hear, oh, there's this great new app. And instead of deleting another one that you haven't seen be that great of resonating with you and what your skill set is, you just download that other app without considering how much extra time. I tell people when I'm consulting and coaching them that when you add a new app to your phone, you're adding another job, and you're adding a whole nother list of voices to your life. So you're like, oh, you know, download the app, jump on it every once in a while. Think about how much time, if you have an iPhone that measures how much time you're spending in each app, you can really start to see how much time out of those 24 hours a day, you know, for most people, you know, you're sleeping for 8 of them, or for us 7, you know, with a baby. But it's important to not get overwhelmed and think that because it's out there, you should be on it. Beautiful. Because it's better to be like when the disciples were trying to do everything, when the 12 were trying to do everything, and they couldn't because their job was to be overhead of the new church. And they finally were like, there's people that are hungry and we're trying to feed them, et cetera. And they started appointing people to do these things. And so one, I would suggest for all the people that are intimidated by social media and just by the internet in general, don't find that one millennial and task them with everything. Just don't. But the thing is, task that millennial with figuring out, because they know the church. Or even better yet, Gen Z, if you have an active Gen Zer, right? Make them and the millennial collaborate. They'll both learn something from each other. But the important thing is find that one place that would be really good to start, to invest time. Instead of saying we need a Facebook, we need Instagram, we need to go live everywhere because there could be one person that, yes, but it's important for us to find out where we can be strong and not try to spread out too thin. And the last thing I'll say before we move on is, as far as websites, there's still the money in the sense of when you're on a social network, you don't own your contact list. So you might have 5,000 followers, but if Instagram cancels you because of censorship, which is a real deal, you no longer have access to those 5,000 people. And if you don't have a website, if they haven't plugged in any other way, they have no idea to find you, how to find you again. So even if it's a super simple website that just has 3 pages, and they just sign up to get occasional emails, or just say, hey, if we ever migrate to another platform, we'll email you one time to let you know what platform that is, whatever it is, even if it's something like that, or they just give you their email for just in case. It's really important because we're living in an age where, entire countries are being censored on Facebook. Australia's news is not on Facebook to be shared right now. So we have to just think, maybe it'll never be us in our lifetime. But even if, you do there's a misunderstanding, your account's deleted. Now what do you have? But you can own your contact list, unlike you can own your followers on any of these platforms.
That's good information.
Wow.
I like the threat that you talked about of censorship, and the protection is the ability to migrate, flexibility and mobility, being able to move. I feel that in the coming years, the church is going to get more and more censored because our message is more and more not received. And the only way to protect ourselves electronically online would be the ability to migrate. So that's a good point. I like that. That's a great point. Being flexible. But what's so interesting about this, Michelle, is so many of us are just getting into this. So half the words you said.
It's another language.
I'm pulling out an online dictionary. I'm looking up all these words. I'm telling you right
I am planning Zoom classes for interested leadership in churches, instead of trying to do it individually and charge people all that. It's like a pick your brain Zoom. And so I'll let GGWO know, because I think it's important to know those small steps that you can do yourself without getting overwhelmed. I want to protect people from getting overwhelmed.
And I'm going to say this too. We've done this another way. I just sent 3 memory cards or memory sticks to Africa because Pastor Jackson in Kisumu said, hey, we would love to be able to listen to the show, but downloads and all this stuff and the money that's involved. I just got him data. So I just got him 3 memory cards. He just called me. He's like, I got him. He's holding them up.
Wow.
And all we did was download our show onto those memory sticks and ship them out. That's still going digital. That's still putting it into a digital format. They're going to plug it in. They're going to listen to it. And there's just so many ways to bring this message, because he says, go out to all of the world, go out to every corner, right? Now, to do that, granted, we go to, man, you guys are awesome pastors in Africa and everywhere around the world that get out there in the villages. But then there's the young people who, man, like Pastor Jason was saying, are online. Yeah, they're online. And TikTok, actually, we were talking to Brian Barcelona, who deals with Gen Z, big guy that does with Gen Z. And we're talking to him about this impact. TikTok right now, there's a group of 20,000 Gen Z people studying the book of Matthew together.
On TikTok.
And that's TikTok used for that. It's interesting to hear that, but it's awesome at the same time that they're coming together and learning the word of God, because right now everything's closed down.
I will tell you, in Africa, we're starting to grow. Pastor Daniel Tamafte in Zimbabwe, he does WhatsApp. He uses the WhatsApp platform, and he reconnects with other guys. And I think I got this number right. He can check with me later, but he reaches 100,000 people a month.
Beautiful.
Through WhatsApp. He bought 10 cell phones. He sits there and gets WhatsApp accounts. He has multiple WhatsApp accounts, and guys keep connecting. And his I said, have a goal of 100,000. I think he's over 100,000 now. And literally all over Zimbabwe and Southern Africa through WhatsApp, we've got like Schaefer's, for instance, Dr. Stevens' Face Thoughts. All of this is out on WhatsApp, going between 100,000 people. He's rocking 10 cell phones and a fistful of Facebook accounts. I'm sorry, not Facebook, I'm sorry, WhatsApp accounts. So there is a lot of benefit there. I do know the reason why WhatsApp works better in third world countries is because they don't have much data. They don't have a lot of data. So Facebook, WhatsApp, not so much TikTok, at least in Africa, but Facebook and WhatsApp, huge. In fact, people do business. They have whole businesses that their livelihood is, okay, I meet all my customers through WhatsApp. Money is sent electronically. So that happens. So there is a lot of fruit that can be gathered. And speaking of fruit, let me ask you guys this question. Then Ryan, I'll ask you as well. I'm interested in the feedback because a lot of going out, a lot of ministering out. Do you get souls? Is there feedback as far as people getting lives getting changed, people getting saved? Because one of the challenges with sowing is you measure effective. One of the ways you measure effectability is there fruit? Because I don't want to say I've got a website to say I have a website. I don't want to say I've got a podcast to say I have a podcast. Because it seems nowadays, I mean, everybody I talk to, like, what's wrong with you? You don't have a podcast. Like, something's wrong with me because I don't have a podcast. And I go, really? What is that? You don't have that?
You should have a podcast.
You see my...
You're amazing.
Pastor Jason just rebuked me. He's like, you don't have a podcast? I'm actually insecure about that. But I mean, truck drivers with podcasts out of his truck. So my question is, okay, it is useful. Is it effective? Do you guys have any stories about effectiveness?
So point one, WhatsApp, awesome. Even in America for churches, we use WhatsApp for our men's ministry, women's ministry, because why? There's no limitation on video. There's no limitation, like time limits. Every other social media thing is limited to like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
WhatsApp, I can preach a 40-minute sermon and upload that thing onto WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is a cool app if you're out there listening. As far as statistics and all that stuff, again, I'm going to pass that over to, but I'm going to say this. We do get those messages. We do get those people who write in and say, you know what, man, this really impacted my life, or this changed the direction I was going in. As far as the statistics, we don't do this. I think when we went into podcasting, you got to understand that this is a ministry. This is a ministry. It's for one. First, it's for God, and really in that, if we said if we reach one person, then God, we're doing your will, and Beautiful. He has worked in that for us. We sit back. I'm telling you, she can tell you more on that because it's in her work and everything else, but the demographics.
Yeah, I mean, as far as demographics, we make a point to not fixate on our metrics because we have the faith that each episode might have completely different numbers, and it's because the Lord is letting different people hear the episodes that they need to hear. But to second Shea, we've had people that individually have come up to us. Some have even been on our show since then, so that they can kind of share what it's done. But one of the interesting things is when we to kind of go on a quick tangent, I saw a screenshot from Reddit, and it was an atheist group on Reddit talking about, and they were lamenting over the fact that their kids were all in love with VeggieTales, and that their kids knew that, their kids were insisting that VeggieTales was about history, but other cartoons were fictional.
Wow.
They could tell the difference. Wow. And they were beating their heads against the wall, trying to figure out how to make their kids stop believing in VeggieTales. And the person that had shown this screenshot, above it, their comment on the screenshot was, the culture war goes both ways.
Wow.
And so I think that what has often happened is we look at what the world system has put in place with all of their, I'll just say their demonic blessings, right? And all their striving blessings. They've put into practice a lot of really efficient and powerful media outlets, right? There's Hollywood, there's radio, there's they own it, they dominate it. And we tend to go in and borrow a space. We rent a space in this broken system and we declare the gospel from there.
That's great.
And the Lord has been faithful to allow us to be fruitful in that. But because of the internet, we now have the ability to provide. I mean, you can send a few $100s to a country that it might be hard for them to get it themselves, and they can get the same equipment we have that makes our podcast possible. And the idea is, rather than relying on those very few rich and well-positioned Christians to create the content, and then we talk about how cheesy the movies are, or how repetitive the songs might sound, and we beat up the people that are actually doing it. We now have the opportunity to put our time where our mouth is. I won't even say money because of how affordable it is. We have the opportunity to say, I'm going to not watch Netflix tonight, because we canceled Netflix so that we could podcast, because we realized, I did the math, 21 hours a week were wasted watching other people live out their dreams on TV.
Wow.
And I was like, when I say, Lord, give me more time, he's been pointing it out. I'm poorly stewarding my time. So yes, we should focus on the metrics, and yes, we should look at how effective we're being, and we have those. God has been very generous to give us these stories and testimonies from people. But additionally, if we're called to do it anyway, go out there and try and see what it does, because the more Christians put out content that can be digested by the lost and the believer, then we are competing now with a truth and life-giving message. We're competing against that other system, and we're dismantling that system by proving that it's obsolete. So I think that's the mindset that we can have now that we couldn't before.
And it does reach out. We're having listens from India. I mean, globally, we're being listened to. Pastor Jason could attest to this, because when he looks at he's seeing where everything is going. That's the amazing thing about the RSS that he was talking about. It's just a feed. It's a little code that puts your podcast when you record it. I'm going basic for y'all. It's a little code that puts it out, but it goes out to a lot of people. And we're not just pushing the podcast. You know, we're bringing on pastors. Pastor Renaldo, I've been after you. I got this microphone. Maybe you didn't quite understand. Now I'm calling you out in front of everybody.
Wow.
Maybe you didn't quite understand what I was saying.
Now
Bring
we're
the
gonna
heat. Bring the heat.
This.
And now
Let's
we're
see
going
this.
to Ryan Reagan right now. As the camera starts to pan.
You see this
my
back
gosh.
here?
God
This
is
is another
speaking.
place to speak from.
Look, right
So
there.
I'm calling you out.
We're handing it over to Ryan Reagan right now. Right. So
Deflection.
let's
Wait.
see here. So Ryan, I mean, now that we're doing all of this extra stuff here with Baltimore, have you noticed a lot of feedback from just a lot of the extra content that we're doing here now? Like Missions Monday is a result of that.
Yeah, I would say that for us, like we get more interaction from Facebook than we do from Instagram, and it's funny, we get more likes on our posts on Instagram than we do on Facebook. So it's a little
Interesting.
bit of an interesting scenario, but I at the same time agree that you don't want to watch the metrics too hard, because it could get discouraging. Because people are watching, people are interacting, but there have been cases where we've had people message us and say, "Hey, I met these people out on, outreach." They didn't call it outreach. I think they were like, we were in the Aldi parking lot, and they were like, I don't know their name, but they went into great detail about how they looked, that they were on motorcycles. And so from there, we were able to figure out that they were talking about this specific person. And then we connected them. The only way they could find us was through Facebook. So that's one example. Another one is a lady who messaged us on Instagram looking for the young adults Sunday morning group. And so it is working. People are, I don't have examples about souls being saved through it or stuff like that. But I do know that when we have certain series or things on prayer and stuff like that, people do comment, or they send in their prayer requests. They do message us. And so it is working. And yeah.
That's good. I think both of you kind of said the same thing about, and let me couch this correctly, that it's a ministry, it's a calling, it's a form of our ministry that we're ministering, and that when you're ministering, there isn't a lot of always feedback. We heard that last night, that our labor is not in vain, but yet we do labor, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15:10. There is a ministry, there is a message. We are sowers, and this is just a new way to sow, which is kind of great. I like what Michelle said. This is a great new way to sow, and we want as many sowers as possible. Let me ask you this question, Pastor Jason. You mentioned this word boundaries, because I find that sometimes when Christians kind of walk into the internet, there really is no filter for it. It's the most unprotected, unorganized, ungovernmental. landscape in the world. I mean, you can say, and you know what, a man has baby. You can say anything, and someone else will second it, like it, and you just keep going like, how is that possible? It's how do you have the boundaries and going in? What's the mindset about boundaries?
Wow, that's good. Can I go back like 3 steps? Is that okay?
You can go back 7 steps.
Yeah, I have an amazing testimony because, like Michelle, you're saying, our communities are being dismantled, and this is a way to reconnect people. But so we work with Fed Hill on call a readiness prayer group, and so I think prayer requests and connections of testimonies are huge. So, like for instance, there was a 10-year-old girl that had COVID, and we were in touch with the mom, and it was pretty serious. She was, organs swelling, getting ready to intubate her, and we sent this out, archaically through a broadcast text. People that wanted to be on this feed or this chain, and we got 40 people praying, and it was incredible. Honest to God, in 3 days, there was a dramatic turnaround, and she was released. It was amazing. This 10-year-old girl today is normal. But there's an instance of prayer, getting the word out, getting the synergy together, getting the corporate prayer, getting the intentional travailing in prayer. So I believe, of course, building subscriptions like you're saying, building, broadcast texts can be good and bad. You want to make sure the people that are on there want to be on there. Otherwise, your phone is pinging every bit. But yeah, so I mean that. And
I'm blocking people now.
And I'll say something about apps. My brother has an app for his church, and it's great. You can communicate what's going on in your church with just a touch of a button, and it's just great to get the word out. And because the devil always fights communication. He's always trying to make things ambiguous and/or oh man, I wish I knew that. And we're trying to help people connect. And
Beautiful.
But boundaries. I'm a firm believer. When you're on the internet, you should be there with a purpose, obviously, because just the lust patterns can kick in and side swipe anybody. So I think big thing is a filter on your phones and your computers are always valuable, and also just having a purpose. Like, okay, I love what you said, Michelle. Saying no to the good thing and saying yes to the great thing, and saying, okay, now. Maybe I don't have all this extra time, because really it's a part-time job. I mean, working with the Inner Revolution podcast, I've got about 15 countries that I see that are listening, and I don't even know how that's even possible. But I'm just focusing on the content. But again, engaging with everyone's impossible. But again, it's like you want to present and streamline your content, but again, boundaries. So I would say filters, I would say purposed content and/or reason for being on there, and then tracking your hours. I mean, it's easy. You can peruse Facebook and you've lost 50 minutes, and it can be. You're not going to believe this, maybe, and this might be a little bit. I don't know. I get most of my information on Facebook about even our own church. Wow. And that sounds strange, but a lot of people maybe won't communicate, but we have different groups like Call to Anguish and others that communicate real needs. So I comment and/or call the person. I always make sure I want to connect with them directly. So there's some real positives.
I'll push this to you, Ryan. Same question about because I know with a church social media presence or a church Facebook, a church, any kind of presence, you have an access to everything. And sometimes it's easy for your message, like he said, your message is not streamlined. So the whole of Christendom is accessed to your social media platform. So you're dealing with issues that aren't maybe even your vision, maybe aren't your portion, or maybe even aren't your direction, but they're all being sent to you. And how do you have boundaries in that?
I think for me personally and our team that works on this, we have to determine what I think we have to filter it through ourselves first, through God, because there is so much information. And there was a period of time not long ago when the information was so heavy and it was coming in so rapidly about all kinds of different things that I think we kind of paused on social media for a bit. Like, we didn't stop posting our church services and stuff like that, but we just stepped back a little because nothing was being received positively.
Wow.
No matter what it was. And there was like a struggle back and forth. So I think for us, we had to like focus on what we really wanted to send out there, what our message was. And is it important for that message to go out right now at this time during whatever is happening? So I think we have to know how to look at the information ourselves as the people who put out information also, because sometimes you can have a specific message and you see something else on social media and it might distract you or it might change your view on what you were about to promote and stuff like that. So I think it's just like in everyday life, you have to take it to God and decide like, is this like, how important is this, and filter this through, and God, you need to help me look at this because right now everything is looking one way and we thought it was a different way and stuff like that. So I think like personally, you have to filter it through God.
Excellent. Good stuff. Great answer. Michelle and Shea, I want to ask you the same question. Your thoughts about boundaries, because again, particularly in your case, because yours is much more of a business, so you're much wider in your scope of who you're going to see as well as a ministry. So you're going to get guys that maybe a church website might not get. You're going to get all the demographics versus the church's demographic a bit more narrow. So how do you guys establish boundaries?
One boundary is it's not a business.
Okay.
It's a ministry.
Okay.
Some people are putting podcasts out because they have a book or they have this or they have that. For us,
Beautiful.
it is strictly ministry. We have been called by God to put this out. The boundaries that we put in place, we reach out through social media outlets, and we make it available for people to send us their email. That is the boundary. We kind of put it in there as we give them the information kind of on the street. We give them we still evangelize on the street. I mean, this hasn't changed nothing. Our ministry hasn't changed. We just added something. But you go out onto the street and you talk to somebody and you give them your card or you give them that connect or maybe you ask them, hey, can I get your phone number? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. But it's the same principle. And when you do this, you do it in the same way.
Sure.
And it's just like, okay, hey, here's a pantry. We make business cards. Hey, here, somebody might be like, I've been struggling. And I talked to a girl at Home Depot the other day. And she's like, and I said, hey, how are you doing? It's typical evangelist. Hey, how you doing? Interactive. She was like, really? I'm not doing well. I said, tell me about it. And then I said, here, take this. We've got a little space on our website where you can send in a prayer. Please talk to us. Send us a prayer. We'll pray for you. So boundaries is kind of the same way you would look at evangelism. It's either going to hit them or it's not going to hit them. They're going to make the choice whether they want to do it. It's free will. They need to come.
Yeah. And to add on that, so I have the 3125 business, and then I have the Pantry Podcast, which is 100% ministry. 3125 has an aspect that is ministry. But one thing is I just realized I needed social media boundaries overall.
Okay.
And I had about 1,300 Facebook friends. Now I'm down to about 800.
Wow.
I purged, and it wasn't because I didn't like everything everybody was saying. It was more, I haven't spoken to you in many years and I don't even see what you're posting. And like, why complicate the feed? I want to see uplifting true things as much as possible. And one of our pastors, Pastor B, he says, guard your eye gates and your ear gates because they influence what comes out your mouth gate. And so it's important for us as people who are actively deciding to be in a fishbowl. As soon as you start a ministry, you're in a fishbowl because people that interact with you now are watching what you do.
Yes.
And social media makes it really easy to do so. So I removed a lot of the noise, and I've decided not to accept anyone I don't know on my personal Facebook page. And I'm conscious about what I let go out public that can be viewable if you search for me on Facebook, and what is private that only the people that I actually know that are on my Facebook can see. I've stopped sharing a lot of stuff there, and I focused on like who actually cares about this. Like photos of my daughter, like we have chats with like the grandparents, I'm like, not that no one, like I can't post ever, but I'm like, okay, there's a lot of noise out there. And am I contributing to the noise with something that isn't eternal? Because where's the pressure there too? There's pressure to post.
Yeah.
So instead I'm like, okay, well, instead of putting all this pressure to just post my life, let me just post Christ, because then if they do come and disagree,
Excellent.
they're coming to disagree with Christ, not me, and I don't have to take it personal,
Right.
which is one less way I stumble. So I think about it from this lens. Is this going to cause me to stumble or not? Is following this person going to cause me to stumble? Is saying this causing me to stumble? Is like reading this going to cause, and I try to clean it out. And then we also finally, our ministries have their own accounts. It's not conflated with our own. So that if we ever choose to split them, so it's like we do not want to hear from this group here, we want this domicile, right? Then we can have that. But then the pantry is very clear, like, hey, hit us up here, and on Instagram you can hit us up on all of ours. But we've made conscious decisions, and we're intentional about where we are making it known. Reach out to us here, talk to us here, and which outlets we're like, this is kind of just for us, for the occasional use.
And I'm going to add something on that. She tells me I need to add a picture of something of my life so people can relate. otherwise you can just be too much. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I'm not saying there's too much God. Please, y'all. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes in this realm, like a pastor, you're going to know more about your pastor because you're going to be around them. Yeah. You're going to know more about your body, the body life and the people around you. It's the same thing on social media. So sometimes she's like, you might want to throw out a little picture.
Show the smile that God has given you, not just text.
Not just text, not just devotionals, not just whatever.
Michelle, I just felt that. I'm sorry. I just felt that.
That's why you need to come on the podcast.
Well, I'm still rocking emails and text messages. Are you kidding me?
No, our podcast. Come on to our
Michelle,
you don't have to have your own.
Michelle, I just sent a letter out yesterday. A handwritten letter with paper. Yes, I know.
I love it.
What's that?
Yes.
I love it. I have a notebook that I do all my notes that I actually I write. It matters.
Hey, just remember, Pastor Renaldo was like beating me down because I do all my schoolwork through my iPad.
I was kind of shocked. I said, if there's a power outage, all of your notes are gone. My daughter asked me the other day, she said, let me ask you a question, Daddy. What is a Walkman? And I looked at her and I walked away. I was like, what? You don't know
this
what
is a Walkman. Watch me. This is a Walkman.
She said, what is a Walkman? I said, I'm walking away. I'm walking away. Oh, my God. Wow. The word dinosaur was in my mind. Dinosaur. Are you kidding me? I walked away. I just said, wow. I just said, oh, my God. Okay. Any last thoughts? Ryan, any last thoughts as we close?
Yeah, I mean, social media has been an awesome tool for us during this time. And I think, like going back to something someone said earlier, it doesn't have to just be your church. It can be your personal ministry. I know that people who are not like representing their church in specifics, but they go on and they share their morning devotional for anybody who follows them, or it's live for anybody who wants to see it. And that's their ministry. That's what they can do during this time, because maybe they can't get out, or maybe they don't see people very often. And that's just as meaningful as representing a church or representing a specific ministry. Like, we all have a ministry. We're all called to ministry. And social media is one of those outlets that has become a great tool. And then you just have to be careful, because it can just be the wrong kind of tool at the same time.
Yep. Awesome thoughts. Okay, Shea and Michelle, any final thoughts as we close it? Thank you, Ryan.
Yep. I just want to tell people to be careful of the time suck.
Yeah.
And for us, there are methods out there that you can post things. I know if you look at ours, it's like nonstop, because we're posting, or at least on ours 3 times a week, on Instagram or something, because the way we set it up. But you can set up automatically to do this. Michelle's teaching me how to do it, because I'm like, y'all, I'm a little older, and I'm like,
yes.
Something that takes me like an hour takes her like 10 minutes. And I'm like, okay. But I'm just saying, watch the time suck. I think the biggest thing is watch the time suck.
Yeah.
What are you really, is it taking up more of your time that you could be, watch this I love your class in discipleship with your family, right?
Yeah.
So there's God, and then there's family, and you don't want everything to take away from your family too, because you're supposed to be discipling them as well, or being the mother. So watch the time suck. That's one thing I throw out there.
And then my final thought would be, we've talked a lot about social media and online and all this stuff, and that really caters to some generations more than others. But I will say, we were watching something yesterday that actually like pinged it in my head, but don't forsake analog. Don't forsake paper and pen. Don't forsake, because I think we get to a point where we're so comfortable with the convenience
Hallelujah.
that, one, we get lazy in a lot of ways, but also if and when, I mean, there's going to be a generation, it might not be ours, but there's going to be a generation where they don't have access to this because they're going to be a Christian and they're not going to be allowed to use the internet.
Wow.
Done. Like that's pretty much
Right.
going to happen. So rather than say, forget that journal over there, try this Google Doc. I'm like, yes, please use the Google Doc because then you can do it anywhere. But don't lose the arts that came before us.
That's so
Just
good.
add on, but never think that, oh, you know, this real church thing's so outdated, you know, live stream is it. And it's like, no, there's things, this is all enhancement stuff, improvement
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Wow.
But do not lose the things, do not become reliant on electricity and data access. Make sure that you can still write, read, have a physical Bible for any dark time, even if the power goes out for 2 days, like it did just now in Texas. Make sure you have
Right.
the way to still move your ministry forward and you're not completely floundered when your 100% Instagram ministry is done and you have to do something else.
So translation, y'all who think you're getting away by staying home, go to church. If your church is open, go to church. You know, because
Amen.
we can't guarantee you, we're tech team, we can't guarantee you that we're going to keep that live feed going.
Hebrews 10:25. Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, but
Amen.
do it the
Amen.
more. I had two pastors that are friends of mine outside of the ministry that said, Pastor Renaldo, I'm going completely digital. Taking my whole ministry digital. I'm closing my church and I'm going digital. I said, so God led you to close your physical doors and go completely digital. Are you sure about that? Are you sure that's God, really? So when you don't have digital, you have no church. Is that where you want to go? Is that really the Holy Spirit? I would challenge you to pray hard about going 100% digital. I like what you said, Michelle. This is an enhancement, not a replacement.
Excellent.
That is so
Right.
important. That is so good. Closing thoughts, Pastor Jason.
Yeah, I just, Michelle, what you said about keeping it Christ-centered, but also there's that personal aspect. You know, I think of, you know, what we did in Frederick. We did a concert. We put it on YouTube. You know, we had 500 views. I mean, we don't even know, like for church planting, YouTube's a great way for people to get to know you from afar. And I think everything is a fishhook, you know, that ultimately it would lead them in or lead to a conversation or lead to a personal, you know, a personal connection. Because there you'll find the antagonist. The antagonist is there. So, you know, again, we're defending, if we could say, the gospel rather than ourselves. And, you know, and I would just say lastly, dialogue. I think our generation now, they're going to ask why. And I don't think we should shy away from that. I think we should have concrete reasons for what we're saying. And I find this with a lot of young people is like, okay, why do you believe what you believe? So yes, we bring them back to scripture, not my opinion, not my preference, not my cultural whatever. It's scripture, it's conviction, it's testimony, but also let's talk about it. Like I think sometimes people are like, oh, you know, you just take it and just because I said it, no, that doesn't work really much anymore. We want people want to unpack it. There you go, Shea. There's my word. Unpack it again. We want to dissect it and pray. And I'll just say one more boundary. If I wake up thinking about what I'm going to post on Facebook before I even pray to God, I mean, that's a good indicator that maybe I'm too saturated with technology.
Wow.
Like I want to kind of say, okay, God. And I find myself like this too. I have to like shut it all down and plug everything and just lay ourselves before God. But dialogue, keep the dialogue open to the one that's really caring about what you're saying. I love what you said, Michelle. I mean, the purging is necessary. The antagonist will try to leech you, and we just say, have a great day. You're not going to have my day. Anyway.
When you do open yourself up, you know, when you do go out there, you do open yourself up, and you want the person that wants to dialogue, but you also have the antagonist laying in the weeds, and they've got that artificial courage to argue and go to war with you because they're 1,000 miles away. You can't touch them, so they're emboldened. So being able to be distinguishing about what is of God for me and who is of God for me to talk to. Let me correct that. Who is of God for me to talk to, and surprisingly, who is not. And the
Right.
open person, the apologetic in 1 Peter 3:15, right? Anyway, this is good stuff. I like the enhancement. I love that thought. I'll be thinking about this all day. Not replacement, but enhancement. That is good. God is always trying to enhance my ministry. The method may be more flexible, but the message is the same. We're just getting creative about it. And like you said, Michelle, we may go back. We may have to go back, and time will say we have to go back to the old ways. Don't lose the arts. Don't
Yeah.
get so electronic that you lose the arts, right? Let's not lose that. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Thank you, Shea. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Ryan. God bless you, Pastor Jason. It's been
Yep.
great. We'll see you again next week on Missions Monday. God bless.
Bye.